What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time excited to bring you a look at the Heroes of Might and Magic 3 Remake, which will have just recently got announced from the time of this video, but I'm recording this a little bit in advance. In fact, the reason I'm able to do that is because a while back I was given the opportunity to attend a remote demo of this particular experience. I got to play it for a couple of hours, courtesy of Ubisoft. With that in mind, however, I do want to emphasize that while I know a little bit about the Heroes of Might and Magic series, I am far from an expert, and in the case of 3 in particular, I know that that game has a very, I would say, dedicated community to it, and if you are looking for someone with a lot more in-depth knowledge about it, this probably isn't going to be the video for you. I'm going to go over all the things that I noticed, the highlights from what the remake is going to cover and whatnot, but I also never really played the original very much, and because of that, I'm sure they almost certainly invited a dedicated creator to that community that is, again, much more involved than I am. As a result, this is going to be a bit more of a general overview. And so, let's dive into it. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Heroes of Might and Magic 3 in particular, I would say it's really kind of considered one of the great strategy games out there. You manage armies, manage your town, move around a sort of adventure map where you're gathering resources to build up your town and your armies as you fight off enemy heroes who are taking their turns working against you. And it's definitely one of those early games that I think personified the idea of easy to learn, difficult to master. And given that the original was so well beloved, it's no surprise then that this particular game has a lot to live up to. But the original did in fact release all the way back in 1999. And so, there's been a lot of room then for improvement and the like, so let's talk about some of those changes. For starters, you may well be wondering about the expansions. Those are included and rolled into the base game. The remake itself is being built on Ubisoft's Snowdrop engine. And according to them, at least, the game is really kind of centered around trying to respect and capture what the original game was. Which is why I actually wanted to lead with one of the things that I think is a bit cooler, that they made sure their new map editor and everything that they have available is actually retro compatible. So all of those old maps and stuff that you can still play on the original game should work. There will also, of course, be multiplayer, which has some quality of life stuff itself, like simultaneous turns, but for the unique custom maps that people can make and explore themselves, etc., that should all still load up in the new system. They have developed technology that takes those maps and converts it into the equivalent of the remade version, and so you really shouldn't be losing anything community-wise if everything works the way they want it to anyways. While also, with this new map editor, you'll have some additional things you can do with it on top of that. I just thought that was a really cool way to approach that, provided, of course, it actually winds up working correctly. Now, this does also have the knock-on effect of making sure that that content from the old game should be available when this releases. I do not have the release date currently. I'm not sure if they're going to announce that alongside the announcement of the remake itself, but just so you know, I suppose. So let's talk about a few other things. Because the original expansions are included, we're going to start off with 9 factions. Now, those 3 campaigns are broken up, of course, around the main story and then the 2 big expansions. But it starts with the restoration of Arathia. This putting us in the role of Queen Catherine, who is left to rule the realm after the disappearance of her husband, King Roland Ironfist, and if that wasn't enough, shortly after this, her father, Queen Catherine's father, King Nicholas Griffinheart, is assassinated. And thus, Queen Catherine returns home to rally forces and try to put her homeland to rights after all of this upheaval, and that puts her into conflict with several other factions, and all of that together sort of forms the main crux of the main campaign. However, there are other game modes available, and the multiplayer. And there will also be a handful of improvements and things directly inspired by like community mods, etc., to hopefully make that a more appealing option even. So straight away, you should see that the enemies on the map will be a little more reactive to your presence. There will also be things like seasons and weather. There's a kingdom map mode, which will give you a full overview of the map you find yourself on. And there's also even going to be some interesting quality of life features, like, for instance, the ability to assign heroes a role. Now, this is important because the people leading your armies, who are in fact your heroes, will mostly be controlled by you, but it is possible to set up some light automation here. So you can assign a hero for your armies a role, at which point they will mostly act of their own accord, doing those things on your turn as you have dictated. Now, to take that a step farther as well, they've also added a planning tool to the cities that you'll be operating. These cities serve as your hub. You can build them up, which gives you access to more recruitment and the ability to raise stronger armies. But the thing is, normally, if you don't have this automated, you have to go into each city every turn and, actually physically do the things you want that city to do. Well, they've added a planner of sorts that effectively allows you to plan and manage the upgrades without having to manually go do it yourself every turn. So you can make sure that the upgrades you want are happening while not having to personally micromanage it. Add on top of that a handful of other things like the new inventory system for your heroes, the new prologue campaign, the campaign itself now being the 3-in-1 with the expansions rolling just right along. There are brand new cutscenes to actually show off some of the things in a way they could not do in 1999. And you've got some cool stuff. Now, as a strategy game, should come as no surprise, the actual battles between armies are turn-based. In battles, you're going to use things like your heroes to actually manually activate things like spells, etc., and your units who will attack the enemy accordingly. While I don't want to get too bogged down in the specifics of the actual combat system, I did still want to highlight a couple of things. For starters, they've added a free camera, so you can rotate the turn-based battlefields from any which angle and kind of get an eye on the action as you please. You can also take a zoomed out view, that is to say get a sort of bird's eye look at it where you can then strategize a little more appropriately, and to help facilitate exactly that, there is a button you can press, I think it's Alt by default, that will actually show you the movement range of all of the units in place. So this can help you dictate exactly where to set an enemy to be just out of reach, because in general, all of the units can move or attack every round, so not being able to reach an enemy is a big deal, provided they're not ranged. There are also, of course, your siege battles. When you try to take the city of an enemy, you have to siege it and lay waste to it, and this is a little more involved because they tend to have things like walls that can fight you off with their own defenses kind of built in. There can also be things like moats and whatnot. You will have to get around those with either special abilities or bringing in siege weaponry like a catapult, for instance. And so there's just some fun stuff all in there with the 9 factions, with all the different resources you can claim. Hopefully you kind of get an idea of the difficult to master part of this whole experience. Luckily though, building up a hero and turning them into a fearless leader, if you will, to actually lead some of these armies you are raising is critical, and as you start winning these battles, that hero levels up. You can also equip them with various items, and when they level up, they get a bunch of perks and abilities to help make them much, much stronger and enhance the things they can actually do. So when you put all of that together, at least at first glance, it does seem like this is a pretty comprehensive way to experience, again, kind of one of the greats of the strategy genre. And so, if everything they're trying to do here actually pans out, I think this is really, really cool. I love to see games like this brought back to life, or given a new chance at life for people today to experience the greats of old. But as for today, that is pretty much going to do it. I certainly hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.